Hello, everybody. I just want to say the only correct pronunciation of my last name is Görtjes, just so you know. And I am here to represent all the talented people who worked on subtitles. And I want to start by getting a common misconception out of the way, and that's that subtitles are easy to get right, and they are not. And that's because in TV and film, subtitling is a human effort and governed by industry standards. And given the nature of our medium, not to mention that a game like ours has over 365,000 words subtitled, subtitling as a human effort is not feasible. So we have to come up with systems that interface with audio code, UI, and engine. And until fairly recently, there were no real standards. In 2017, I started looking into subtitles and how we could improve on the Division 1, having seen the good example set by Assassin's Creed Origins. And I just want to start by showing a video of the subtitles in the first game.
Listen up. I spent 6 years in medical school. I don't give a shit what you saw on TV while you were jerking off to soap operas in your mom's basement, but setting a bone isn't pretty. You want your buddy fixed? You get your gun out of my face.
So, as you can see, perhaps the subtitle splits were not the best they could be. So this led to a proposal to improve subtitle splits, which you can see here, and which is actually better illustrated by these mock-ups of the same scene with improved subtitle splits. From there, we started looking into, I'm missing my notes, but I'll just wing it. We started looking into other subtitle improvements, most of them inspired by TV and film, such as natural subtitle splits based on punctuation, a max number of characters per line, a max 2 lines per subtitle, minimum time on screen, better stacking, center alignment, and sequence dots. And we also started looking into accessibility features, which I think are also just advanced quality of life and user customization options. And those were adjustable font size, letterboxing with adjustable contrast, speaker colors, subtitle settings in the first boot configuration, a subtitle preview in the options menu, and the big one is closed captions with subtitled barks. And I mentioned barks specifically because barks are usually not subtitled in big open world games, just due to the sheer number of them. And for those of you who don't know what barks are, they're like short systemic lines that are like reloading and cover me. And just to illustrate, over 75% of our VO lines are barks, and that's over 60,000 lines in the main game. And so for closed captions, because they, at that point, had never been done before in Ubisoft, we had to do all of our research from scratch. And one of the biggest, I guess, inspirations was the work of Reed Kimball, an American designer who was part of a, I think, pioneering modding group called Game CC. And one of their projects was a mod of Doom 3, which they called Doom 3 CC. And I have a video here, which is pretty low res. It's old, and hopefully you can see it.
Warning. Coolant rod 2 offline. Main reactor operation temperature exceeding safe levels.
Marine, Bravo team is down. Their operational status is unknown. We're carrying a military transmission card. It's vital you retrieve that card as it...
So you get the picture. Other resources that we used were, among others, the work of Ian Hamilton, the BBC, and our accessibility team in Ubisoft Bucharest. And this all led to the official subtitles and closed captions design for the Division 2, which I think might be the longest in the industry. And what we learned from this is that we need to do, in the future, the design in a more technical way, because it proved pretty difficult to translate the design to code. And so in hindsight, I kind of see this more as an aspirational document. And you can see it's still scrolling. So in the design, we identified 2 degrees of captioning. The first was stage directions and onomatopoeia in scripted dialogue, and the second was I guess, the real closed captions, full captions, including sound effects during gameplay. And the one that we identified as feasible to do in the production time that we had was the first, stage directions plus onomatopoeia in scripted dialogue, plus the subtitled NPC barks, which I mentioned previously. But we would be set up to add full captions later. We also settled on 3 subtitle modes. The first is scripted dialogue, which are your box standard subtitles. The second is scripted dialogue plus barks. And the third one is full captions. From there, we got to the UI design stage. And you're not supposed to read this, but I have a first mock-up here of closed captions and subtitles. And this led to the first UI art mock-up, which you can see here, which also includes our directional marker for closed captions and barks, showing the direction a sound or bark is coming from and the player's proximity to it. So in terms of closed captions, what we have in the game right now is captions during scripted dialogue, and you can see a screenshot from the game here. And I want to tell you a little bit more about how they work. So in this video, you can see me turning closed captions on and off, and you can see that the caption is appearing and disappearing in the example subtitle in the upper right corner. And I won't talk too much about technical details because I'm not a technical person, but I just want to show you what this line looks like in the back end. So this is a screenshot of Oasis, which is a Ubisoft asset management tool for text, among other things. And this is the line you just saw with the closed caption. There is no second line without the closed caption. When closed captions are disabled, our engine omits any text between square brackets, including the leading space before the opening bracket, which you can see highlighted now. Also, since we have 3 subtitle modes, we need to tell the engine which lines to show in each mode. And we do this with the subtitle column in Oasis, which you can see highlighted now. So when this box is checked, the line is classified as a normal subtitle and will appear in all subtitle modes. When the box is not checked, the line can only show in the barks subtitle mode and full captions. And any text that is between square brackets, even as part of a bark, will only show in full captions. So when we shipped, we knew we did a decent job in terms of subtitle accessibility, but we knew we weren't perfect. But luckily, as a games as a service, we didn't have to stop at launch. And we actually asked the Games Lab at Massive to invite players from the deaf and hard of hearing community and to see what we can improve about our barks and closed captions, which has led to some of the improvements we have made so far. For example, the improved directional marker for barks, which actually launched just last week with our latest free DLC episode. The marker was supposed to show, is supposed to show the direction a sound or bark is coming from, including the player's proximity to it. And it worked, but the research showed that players didn't notice the marker or found it hard to read, so we improved it. And the redesigned marker will now show to the left or right of subtitles, depending on if the sound is coming from the left or right. And I actually have a video here of the old marker in action.
Gotta reload. Cover me.
And the new one.
Reload. Got your back.
Another thing that we noticed was that during the number of lines that could be on screen at any given time, our stacking system made things a bit too chaotic and difficult to follow, as you can see in this video here.
Keep moving. Don't stay in one spot for too long.
Device detected.
So that was not great. So we improved it, and scripted dialogue now has priority in the bottom slot with 2 slots for closed captions above that. And if I can just find the mouse. Is it? Okay, there we go.
Hostile threat detected. Take cover.
Get this fucker. Got his position! The right side! Behind that barrier! Fuck! Cover me! I gotta reload! I'll watch your back! Hold the line! Relax.
We also added the speaker colors functionality, which gives each speaker a different text color. And before I move on to future improvements, I just want to show you a video of the current state of our subtitles in the live game.
Incoming alert on the SHD emergency channel. Flash priority.
The base of operations is under attack. Hostile forces have breached our southern perimeter. We are in need of immediate assistance. Repeat, need immediate assistance from any nearby agents.
You don't have to keep beating him. I'm pretty sure he's dead. I want to make sure whoever finds his body knows better than fuck. Good idea. Let me help.
All government personnel, the White House is under attack. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill.
Our job is to make sure nobody comes up from behind. Just keep your goddamn eyes open. I'm gonna drop the motherfucker. I want to see blood. Oh yeah! Come on! Die! Somebody's coming up on me. Oh shit!
I gotta get back to work. Thanks for the movie, Manny.
Anytime, Theo.
You coming over for dinner?
Not tonight. Gotta meet with some National Guard buddies. They're worried they'll get called to hell with quarantine in New York.
Okay.
This is serious.
It's the flu.
Okay.
You worry too much, mijo. Give me your wallet. Yeah. Don't make...
So we plan to keep improving, and one of the big things that we want to add in the future is the standalone closed captions during gameplay. And we hope to ship this in an upcoming release. And some of the sounds that we're looking to caption are, of course, explosions, weapon fire, ambient sound, etc., etc. One thing that we want to be careful not to do is to give players a competitive advantage, because The Division 2 has PvP modes. And I'm going to show you a video of Left 4 Dead 2. And if you've played the game, you know that it has very distinct sound cues to alert you to the presence of certain enemies or items. And in this video, the players turn on closed captions, even though the sounds are not audible, so they still have the advantage of knowing when certain enemies show up. And I hope I can get the mouse back here somehow. Oh, there we go.
Okay. There we go. Okay. That kind of worked.
Just keep your eye on whatever happens. For example, see, there's the pipe bomb ticking right there. Hunter growls, there's a hunter somewhere.
Okay.
Tank. There's a hunter right there. And the tank is here.
Oh, Jesus.
So we want to be careful to avoid this, especially in PvP, of course, without sacrificing on the feature. So before I wrap up, I want to share some quick stats in terms of font size. About 2/3 of our players uses the default small font size for subtitles. About 1/4 uses the medium font size, and about 10% of our players uses the large font size. In terms of subtitle modes, about half of our players play without any subtitles. About 1/3 plays with normal subtitles. About 4% uses the scripted dialogue plus barks mode. and about 14% uses full captions. So combined, more than 18% of our players uses an accessible subtitle mode, which is evidence that these features are not just used by deaf and hard of hearing players. Which takes me to our key takeaways. The first is advocate for accessibility features as advanced user customization options, especially if your features aren't mandatory under the CVAA, because everybody loves user customization. The second is that these features are used by all types of players, as evidenced by the statistics. And the third is continuous improvement. For game as a service, launch is just the beginning. Use post-launch to your advantage for continuous improvement, because people will notice. And with this, I'll give it to Matt for his part.
Is my mic on? You hear me? Okay, I couldn't hear myself. My name is Matt Wagner. I'm a senior game designer. And I want to talk about adding our accessibility options, specifically with CVAA, or how to add more wheels to a car while driving. So to clarify our role, we at Red Storm, kind of a lot of what people know us for as far as the Division and the Division 2 is our Dark Zone and the PvP game mode. And then we were also responsible primarily for the PC version of the game. And so for the CVAA stuff, I just want to make sure it's clear. We were responsible for communication among players, right? The Division 2, you can play in a group. There's also public spaces. There's also things like raids, which have kind of this pseudo large group of 8 players where you normally would have 4. And so we had to support communication under CVAA for all those situations. So that became our primary responsibility, which ended up actually going out kind of into the rest of the game and adding more features where it wasn't necessarily required under the law, but we wanted to make sure that as many players could have access to these features as possible. So at this point in the game, we had a little amount of time and we had lots to do. I had just come onto the project and we had about, I believe, a year until ship. And they said, hey, welcome. I had just come off of working on Star Trek, a virtual reality game. And they said, welcome to this huge third-person shooter. You get to design all the CVAA options. So it actually was one of those moments where I didn't really know what I was getting into. But like I think a lot of people are going to say today, by the end of this process, I have found myself being a strong advocate for these features. And I know that I will be advocating for them in the future as I move forward. So it actually ended up being a great process. Our mantra was fast, efficient, and high quality. So we knew that for these communication options, we weren't going to be able to roll something from scratch, right? We weren't going to be able to take our time, kind of find every dot that we needed to connect. We knew that we needed to ship this thing, but it also had to be high quality, right? The Division 2 is a AAA game. Players have expectations of polish, and so we wanted to make sure to satisfy those expectations. So our thought was to upgrade existing features, deliver quality solutions, and look to others for inspiration, right? Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's just do what works and do it well. Which leads me to our text chat. So I think the text chat feature in the Division 2, which again started with PC, is kind of a great all-encompassing feature that encapsulates our attitude towards the accessibility options we put in. So we wanted to combine usability with functionality. Again, echoing what a lot of people are saying, right? There's no need to bury these options in menus. All kinds of players are going to use these for all kinds of reasons, right? I mean, I keep subtitles on now all the time. I have a little baby. That's just one of those moments where it's like, oh, I absolutely am going to use this feature as well, right? So you can see here, this is our old text chat feature. So this is from the Division 1. This is my very dapper agent. And you can see that we had some basic chat filters, and we could kind of turn them on and off and have notifications. But it was pretty streamlined, right? Not a whole lot of options in there. But our thought was it's already a communication tool. Let's flesh this thing out, right? Like, let's make it so that players have options that are easy to access. Let's make it so that they are frictionless, so that settings applied in the text chat menus are applied to the whole game wherever appropriate. So we ended up having most communications options adjustable within the chat itself. And this is my big old design dialogue, but this was the original design for our text chat, right? Kind of our flowchart here. And there was what could be considered accessibility options. There's a section, but it's kind of sprinkled all throughout, right? There's emotes and tabs and messages and all this super complex stuff. And that was before we knew what we wanted to do. So our decision was, let's focus on the things that are most important, which is organization of communication via this tabs interface and our accessibility options, right? These are going to be used by everyone, or for many people, for many different reasons. Let's streamline those. Let's make those good. So you can see here, this is kind of where our text chat ended up. We just had an update came out. There's a button change, not too much of a difference. But you can see here, so this is all our options, right? And with each update, we've continued to add more. And we've got kind of our tabs interface there in the middle for better organization. And then we've got our accessibility options down here. So one thing that's important to note is, in some ways, The Division is kind of an MMO, right? There's spots where you can hear lots of people talking all the time. And our solution was, the purpose of these features is to help players communicate with intent and not just hear whatever randomness people are yelling out in public spaces. So our options primarily focused on the group chat, which is that one with the green tab right there. But you can see here, all you have to do is press this gear button, and all of these pop up, and you have full access to all of our options here. And you can turn those on or off at any time. And the goal was to have them surfaced here instead of forcing players to go dig into a menu and turn them on and then go back out of the menu and then test them and then they don't like it and then go back. No one likes doing that, right? So what if you could just check them on or off? And that's what we did. So you can see here, using text chat as a tool, you can see that we've really blown this thing out, right? Instead of just this simple set of filters, we've given you text chat as a tool. And this is a kind of synopsis of what we updated. So we added color-coded channels so that you can separate what information you're seeing. Toggleable group information so you can see what's happening with your group when it happens. Group text-to-speech, group speech-to-text. Both of those work on console and PC, which we'll get to console in a second. We added the high contrast option, the large font option, the menu narration, scrolling text, toggleable message info, and more of our slash shortcuts. And what's important to remember is that we were a year away from ship, so a lot of this was things that many people in many places thought we would not really have to look at. Things like adding large font meant that we now needed to go back in and build a stronger scrolling text that accounted for font sizes and window placement. So nothing comes for free. And this is kind of just a basic mock-up of how the flow went, right? But we would get some kind of basic functionality implemented into the engine, say the large fonts. We do a UI mock-up of how that may look within the game. We implement that mock-up of how to access that feature, and then we could activate it maybe via debug. Then we say, cool, this thing works, it looks good in the game, this is how we want it. So we go back to engineering to plug it into that menu system, and then we go back to UI to make sure that it fits in. So it's not as easy as just right-click, add to drop-down menu, as I'm sure many of you know. But it meant revisiting approved features, right? So things like the menu boot flow, we had pretty much put a pin in that, but we had to go back in because we wanted to make sure that players could have menu narration on and some font options. And that meant revisiting this menu that we had all kind of like, okay, that's how you start the game, and then we're going to go finish the rest of the game. It meant that we had to open that back up, which is a bit risky, but it ended up being fine. And it was stronger for it. So there were some platform-specific challenges, and primarily the challenges were getting chat on a console. But I am super excited, and I've seen a few Reddit posts floating around, but you can totally use text chat with your group on The Division 2 on PS4 and on Xbox. It's compatible with a keyboard. But I want to show you here, this is our speech-to-text, and I unfortunately was not able to get the actual speaker, but what we ended up doing, we had a few versions of this, and we kept trying to write our own keyboard system, right? But what we realized is because we were in different territories, the strongest method to do this was we were on a system that had this functionality already. Let's leverage that. So you can see here they dictated into the keyboard, which is on a activated hotkey. It brings this up. You can speak into it. It uses the Xbox interface. You can go back in and you can correct it. You can do this either with your controller or with a keyboard. And then it pops down there in the corner. If they have then speech-to-text enabled, it'll then read it out. And so that's pretty great that we got it on console. We're very excited about that.
Was awesome.
And then same thing here for the PlayStation version, which we tried to mimic their signs and feedback. Button, there we go. So I'll skip ahead a little bit. But you can see down here in the corner, we've got feedback. The player has spoken into the microphone. The system is reading, trying to write down what they wrote. Same thing pops up, right? And this is at the system level. So if you are thinking about or investigating the possibility of text chat or communication options for your console title, I highly recommend looking into something like this. It's worked out great for us. So, sorry. Our goal also was to deliver more than minimum, right? I think a lot of developers feel the same way, right? We get features online, especially as we started becoming more excited about these features. We wanted to just put them everywhere, right? Like, why can't I read everything everywhere? So we did what we could, and we were able to fit our large font and high contrast options into our entire menu here, which was certainly not required by law, but we wanted to do it. Technically, what we were only required to do is make what we call the golden path to accessibility options have these settings, but we thought it's good for everybody. Let's include it. And key takeaways. So I wanted to say it's funny because Patrick and I, who worked pretty separately on this project, ended up with a lot of them, and I'm sure anybody else who has taken this journey into these options has come to the same conclusions. But planning for these features from the beginning cannot be overstated. The earlier you can start talking about like global variables for text color, right? Being able to scale text size, as Ian talked about. All those things, if you build them early, are going to pay dividends later. Designing for accessibility hardens designs and makes them stronger. I mean, you could have many talks just about that, right? But it forces you to reassess your designs and make sure that they aren't good just for one situation, that they are strong and good and meant for a wide variety of players. These features are used by players of all types, and don't bury these features, display them prominently, right? So, speaking of other Ubisoft games, Ian already gave you some of these stats, but I have more stats. So 60% of Assassin's Creed Origins players turned on the subtitles. Far Cry New Dawn booted with subtitles on by default, and only 3% of players turned them off. Odyssey booted with subtitles on. 95% of players didn't turn them off. And then The Division 2 booted with subtitles off by default. And 75% of players turned them on at least once. And 50% of players still have them on at the time of this writing. And also for Breakpoint, which recently came out, David got some stats that currently about 6.5% of players have turned off subtitles. So that many players are still keeping them on after the fact. So we just want to say thank you, and thank you to all the other Division folks that are in the room. And have a good conference. Thank you very much.